I've been trained to like run till you throw up,
Right.
do push-ups till you fucking can't feel your arms. I was afraid to fail.
If you go at that all the time, you will not be optimal.
Don Saladino.
Don Saladino.
Don Saladino.
A world-class trainer and coach, Don Saladino.
A celebrity trainer for
Ryan Reynolds to Sebastian Stan to Blake Lively to Anne Hathaway. And the list goes on and on and on.
But I had rules. I didn't worry about the money piece. I worried about adding value and being great at what I did and being noticed. And like there were all these things that I wanted to do. And then I felt like, okay, that money piece is going to come. The human body, as you start putting yourself into a caloric deficit and you start lowering your calories because you want to lose weight, there's a certain period of time where like your body's going to be like, enough, like you're not giving me enough gasoline for the trip. And then your energy is going to start dropping and then your body's going to start making adjustments to utilize the amount of gas that's in the tank. We have to allow our body to consume nutrition and want to have higher levels of energy. And that takes time to train. You'll know who your friends are when things aren't good. I mean, there were moments I'm just going home, I'm like holding my dogs, like, seriously, man, like, is this gonna get any easier? I'm not gonna lie. Like, did I doubt myself? Yeah. There are times I'm sitting there going, give me a sign, man. Someone, whoever you are out there, like, show me something, because this is hard.
You and I first met, we met at Dr. Gabrielle Lyons' Forever Strong Summit, and you got up on stage to speak. You actually spoke before me. You were doing a panel interview, I think it was with Gabrielle, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what resonated with me, because I go to events and I listen to a lot of people, but before us, there was another speaker that came on, and he was a great speaker, but when he was presenting his thing, he talked about all the things he's not, because it kind of led into his presentation. And one of the things he did, he said, you know, I'm not on the cover of Muscle and Fitness, because he was comparing himself to all the other speakers there. And so when he was doing it, I realized as he's doing it, and the audience did, that he's comparing himself to everybody else that he was sharing the stage with. So when he said, I've never been on the cover of Muscle and Fitness, and he kind of made a joke and he pointed at himself and his body and everyone laughed, he was referring to you, because you were one of the speakers and you spoke after him that was on the cover of Muscle and Fitness. Then you came up on stage after that and you were being interviewed. And when one of the questions Gabrielle said to you said, okay, so you've been on the cover of Muscle and Fitness. And everybody laughed in the audience. Not to laugh at you, but they laughed because the speaker before us made it comical. And what you did in that moment, you owned it. You said, no, I have been on the cover of Muscle Fitness and I've done it 3 times. And let me explain something. And I had so much respect for you in that moment, because most people, they would have laughed with the audience to be like, oh, okay. And you didn't do that. And you did it in a way that was humbling, but you also
Thank you.
Owned it. And in that moment, I'm like, I like this guy.
Thank you.
I like this guy a lot. And you resonated, because I remember when I got up on stage later, I made reference to a lot of the things you had said. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
I do remember that. And I definitely remember you speaking, because I think that's when you and I hit it off after. I think I came up to you after.
You did come up to me after, but I called you out when I was on stage.
Yeah,
I'm like, that guy, where's that guy? Don.
I was in the back. I was like.
You're like, am I in trouble? Yeah. You owned it. Most people would not have. And they would have kind of like pushed that to the side, and you really stepped into it, where a lot of people don't know how to own the things that they've done.
You know, I own it, but I also understand that, you know, I'm not on the cover of Muscle and Fitness because I have the best body or I'm the best looking. Like I put myself in good positions. I surrounded myself with good people. And honestly, I'm not downplaying it, but it was a lot of luck. Like my first cover was in 2018. I was really good friends with the editor-in-chief, Sean Perrine, and he passed away. I want to say that December. October, we were on calls together. We were trying to get a podcast started, and we became really good friends. But he's like, I have pneumonia. I'm in the hospital, and his mom lived really close to me in Long Island. So I was stopping by his mom's and bringing him over like bone broth and like doing all these things I think are going to help. And 3 months later, he's gone. But I was the last cover he chose, and he actually chose it. If the story's accurate, but he chose it in his hospital bed because he was still trying to work, and he chose that. And I think there was a level of I mean, there was gratitude, of course, but I think there was also humility there, because I'm like, yeah, I'm not on this cover if it wasn't for Sean. Like if I wasn't for Sean, I wouldn't be here. And then I went on to do 2 more covers after that. And the next cover was because of Zach, who was Sean's closest friend, who became editor-in-chief. And then from there, it's like they put me on a 3rd cover. So I think every position I've ever been in, it's because I understand, and this sounds ridiculous, but it's like, you are expendable. Like, I'm going to get replaced. Like, there's a time where like suddenly I'm not going to be, the coach, or I'm not going to be working with all these people, or there's going to be a young guy that's going to come in and take my place. He's going to be smarter. He's going to be in better shape. It's just going to happen. And I think I've understood that from a young age. And because of that, I think that's what's allowed me to go in and deal with people at a level where I'm like, oh, I can lose my job right now, which is good and bad. You follow what I'm saying? Because I also feel like, you got to sit there and you got to enjoy it a little bit. But my mindset's always like, oh God, we're going to lose everything in a month, because I was in some pretty tough positions in the last 25 years.
Do you know what's interesting in the U.S. Secret Service?
What's that?
We were all expendable. It's not that nobody cared, but you could easily be replaced, and they would. Like, you were, I don't want to say you were a body, but like it was understood. And there was a saying, you're only good as your last assignment.
Yeah. You're only as good as your last session.
Yeah.
It's just, we use it's the same stuff. It's just, I can go in and I can work with someone and do a great job. And the next session I come in, if my head's not there, or if I'm turning around and I'm in a meeting with my brother and I'm walking out and I'm carrying that on the floor, I'm done. Like, I've just done, a disservice to my client. Like, I have a responsibility. No matter how ridiculous it sounds to certain people, or when they used to refer to are you still doing that training thing? I'm like, yeah, it's like, it's not a hobby. This is my career. Didn't expect it to go in this direction, and I'm grateful for that. But same thing on my end. Like, I can't ever, the term I use is like, you can't sleep on these people. I would be in meetings and, Amex shuts my credit cards down at Drive, or out of nowhere, I'm in my office and all the power goes out. I'm looking at my brother going, where's the power? And he's like, Con Ed shut us down. We can't pay our bills. And I'm getting a call like, oh, so-and-so just, Ryan Reynolds just walked in. You got to train him. And Ryan's like, how you doing? I'm like, great. Are you ready to go? Like, fist bump. Like, how you feeling? Where's the power? Something happened with Verizon. I don't know. Where's the hot water? Like, oh, they cut our water line. Like, rah, 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 yelling, like making up stuff. Like, I had to fake it till I made it. But that happened to me over the 15-year span I had in my club. I almost missed 37 consecutive payrolls. I mean, there were moments I'm just going home. I'm like holding my dogs. Like, seriously, man, like, is this going to get any easier? I'm not going to lie. Like, did I doubt myself? Yeah. I love that. I never doubted myself. Like, yeah, there are times I'm sitting there going, is this like, give me a sign, man. Someone, whoever you are up there, like, show me something, because this is hard. This is no joke.
How did that happen with the gyms? Because you had 2 gyms in New York City.
2 gyms, yeah.
And that's not a small, like, to have a gym in New York City, just to even have the fortitude to say, I'm going to open up a gym in New York City.
Yeah, it's not like, no one's making money in the gym. I love you rephrase that. Very few people are like killing it in the gym business. So we opened a 15,000 square foot, 15-foot high ceilings. The space was 200 feet long from Broadway to Mercer Street. And I think my rent my final year was almost $1 million just in rent. And I think my taxes were $15,000 a month. My overhead was $2 million a year just to break even. So you're in there, it's hustle, hustle, hustle. It's like there's, you had to figure it out. But I got involved in that space in 2005. Remember going and looking for real estate. I had a business plan made. I studied business in college, but I didn't know, like, do you want 15,000 feet, 10,000 feet, 5,000 feet? I'm like, oh, what, more is better, right? Like, it's like, you're not like, there's things that you're not thinking about early on, because, you're always thinking bigger is better. And you're like, all right, well, the money I put into it is, I want to make it grand and I want to make it great. But the reality is you got to develop something, and you got to develop culture, which is really where I hit my grand slam. Like, that's why I was able to establish that culture and build the place that I built, was because of the people I surrounded myself with. I mean, it was next, I'll say it to this day, it was next level. I've never seen a club in the world create what we created. And I left my way. I left on my terms. I mean, 15 years later, my lease expired May 31st of 2020. I was forced to close April 16th of 2020. So I had 3 months where I had to, pay the landlord off or negotiate. I paid him off, and then we negotiated till September. And at that point, I remember I made a pros and cons sheet
About whether to keep it or not.
I was battling so hard, because it was a dream of mine. Like, that was one of the things that allowed me to feel significant. And then suddenly I'm like, I just don't want to do it anymore. I'll never forget. I'm driving by. This sounds like I don't want to make it seem like I'm a goody two shoes. I'm driving by my church one day. I'm really good friends with my Monsignor, and I'm driving by and I see him, and he's probably, no exaggeration, 500 feet away. And he stops at the door and he turns around, and he looks at me and he goes like this. He goes, wait, I'm in my truck. Big Dodge Ram. I'm like,
I've seen it.
Yeah,
I've seen
big,
that
like,
thing.
Red Dodge Ram, like lifted. He walks over to me and he goes, what's up? Like, I'm having a tough time here. I don't know what to do. I'm not expecting answers. He's like, well, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know if I should reopen or not. What's your gut telling you? Everything's pointing in the direction of the not reopen. He's like, you're done. That's it. Go home. You're done. I know that's the case. You know that's the case. You got to let it go. You're moving on to bigger and better things. You're making a better career. You're happier. What is the only reason why you would reopen? I'm like, the people. He's like, that's not a reason to reopen. You're out. I said, thanks. I just drove off. That was it. That was it. I went home. I looked at my wife. I'm like, I'm done. She was like, thank God. She was literally like almost in tears because she's like, don't do this. Everyone knew not to do it. It was just such a tough time. And thank God I didn't do it. I mean, the landlord was renegotiating in a way where he was so certain New York was coming back. And it took years. But
New York's still not back.
no, I don't care what anyone says. It's not
When you
back.
drive by, like
It's not
everything's
back.
for lease, for rent, for.
Everything's different. Everything's different. But then you move on to things that are just, I didn't plan this. And in 1999, if you told me I was doing what I did now, the stuff didn't exist. It's like, oh, you're going to be in like 80 countries. I'm like, oh, I'm traveling all the time. Really? No, you're building a facility in your backyard. Well, I could train people commercially. That's illegal, isn't it? No, you're not training anyone there. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, you're going to be doing a lot of like virtual stuff, like Zooms. Like, what's virtual? What's Zoom? You mean the web? Like this stuff didn't exist. So that's why even back in 99, I went after passion and purpose. I went after the things that were in front of me. But that 20-year plan that we were supposed to create, it's a shit show. If you were to go back and look at my map, it'd be like a big bunch of squiggly lines. Like nothing makes sense, but you got to be malleable in business.
Can I ask you, what was the hardest thing? I've never owned a business like
Yeah.
that. I've never owned a brick and mortar. Like my brother Brendan actually had a gym and he kind of dealt with something similar. He actually shut his down. It was called Core. Different scenario though, but what was the hard, like you're saying it was stressful times. Like what about it?
I think there was different difficulties at different phases of my career there. I think early on, like the first 3 years when I got in 2005, I mean, 2005, I'm 27. Like I would have beat the shit out of myself now if I went back and was able to fight. I would have been like, what are you nuts? Like, what are you doing? Get it together, right? I was a little hot-headed. I grew up in a catering hall background where like my grandfather, you know, I could still feel his hands, like these thick Italian fingers. My grandma was 100% Greek, but they
I
were
wonder
like,
where the hot-headedness comes
yeah,
from.
exactly. But my grandfather, he was just like, when you mess up, you're gonna hear it. There's no like, oh, are you feeling okay? How are your emotions? Like, okay, I'm sorry you're stressed. He's like, no, you screwed up. You're gonna know about that. So I had him, my uncle, and my dad. I just remember sitting in a chair like this and three of them coming at me and just being like, it was like that music commercial where you just feel like the waves and the hair's flying back. I mean, that was like a weekly occurrence for me. So when I got in, I had to start managing people. I was good to people, but I also hit this threshold of like, all right, when you mess up, you're going to hear it. And I found out quickly I can't, the times change. So I think that was early in my career. And then after that, I think throwing too many balls in the air was a big problem. I think I was quantifying success with how hard I worked. So I was just putting myself everywhere, getting into work at 3:30 in the morning, having to sleep in the PT room. I found some guy breaking into the space one night. Tasty Bread Factory was in the basement, and I'm sleeping on the PT table and with a sheet on me, and out of nowhere I'm hearing the door open up. I'm like, like running out, and just all this stuff. It was just, it was just a different time back then. But now, looking at what I went through, I honestly wouldn't change any of it. I mean, maybe if I was to change a couple of things, maybe I would have predicted a couple of investments a little bit differently, or I would have went and done that. It's certain things I just didn't need to go through. But I think that learning curve of almost missing, 37 consecutive payrolls, people will be like, oh, that's terrible. I'm like, yeah, but the most creative moments in my life from a business standpoint was when my ass was against the wall and I was like, I got to figure this out by tomorrow, or my staff's not getting paid, or power's going to get turned off again. And when you do that, then that forces you to make decisions that you're like, wow, I wouldn't have made that. And it worked out. So it's an interesting path I went through. You're not learning what I learned in Harvard Business School. I mean, that was like the nitty gritty of business. And, I am grateful for it.
It's interesting as you're talking about your dad and your grandfather and your
Yeah.
uncle. My father was a very hard man. Like when I say hard, like I guess that's the term. He was like, he didn't want it. Don't feel sorry for yourself. I'd come home if I'd be upset. And he's like, what are you upset about? And my father really would tell it to you like it is. I mean, like when I was younger, I used to think he's so mean, and I'd see you'd watch these TV shows, or I'd hear all my friends who maybe had a little bit of a softer dad, and I didn't understand what he was doing. I remember once I came home and I don't know what I was upset about, but I come home and I'm like, I'm upset and I'm like in tears, and he's just like, what happened? And I'm like, this person did this and this to me. Somebody slighted me or it hurt me. They did something significant enough, and I felt betrayed. And he's like, are you done crying? And I said, what do you mean? He's like, that's enough. He's like, that's enough. And he's like, what did you do about it? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, this person who did this to you, what did you do? And I said, nothing. He's like, you didn't say fuck you? And I was like, what? He's like, sometimes you got to learn how to say fuck you.
It's powerful. No, it is.
And I learned well, and this is where sometimes I have to like manage my T-Rex. You and I talk about it. I'm very much in a fight mode. But he taught me, he's like, you can't just sit there. He's like, sometimes he would say, put some water in your wine and let things flow, let things pass. But he's like, but sometimes he's like, you can't let people or things break you to a point where you're like this. He's like, get up and go.
He was right, in my opinion. I mean, I have as you know, I have a 16-year-old daughter and a 15-year-old boy. And I remember my daughter at a certain point was going through that a little bit. And even now, like, listen, I love her. She'll get mad, but she's still a kid, right? And she'll come home sometimes and you'll see her kind of like let her guard down a bit and get a little bit emotional. And you're like, as a parent, you say to yourself, what's that right amount of like empathy to show? And like, listen, I'm here for you. I love you. But also like get off your ass and toughen up a little bit, right? Like there is a line there, in my opinion. So I love his approach because he was just like,
well, he was all that. And my
right?
mom had a little bit of the empathy, but I think they also grew up in like hard times.
Different times.
Yeah. But I don't think I would have been as driven as I was had he held my hand. And so even as a mom now, like I try to figure out like the balance with my daughter. I want to be there for her, but at the same time, like there's times where I'm like, tell my husband, let her cry, let her have a fit, let her hit the floor. Like she needs to know failure. And I need her to learn how to lose. You know, when I listen to you talk and you've talked to me about your businesses, like you learned, I guess, how did you learn how to lose? Like when you're dealing with this stuff and the heat's on you, a lot of people, they just fucking fall apart.
Yeah, I'll back it up. Like some people ask me now, like, when did your career start? I'm like, the second grade. And they're like, what do you mean? And I was like, oh my God, I had a terrible hearing problem. I couldn't form a sentence. I was like stuttering every 3 seconds. At that time,
I didn't know that.
Oh, it was awful. I used to come home from school in second grade, like upset. My mom be hugging me and I'm like, I'm not good at anything. And I was all bummed out. But, I think second grade, how old are you? I don't even remember. What are you, 7? Like you're a child, like you're a little kid, but back then they did things differently. So they took like the kids with dyslexia and the kids who had issues and they put them all in one class. It's ridiculous. So like that class with 5 or 6 kids would roll out at lunchtime and all the other classes would be sitting there. Kids would be laughing, so I think things started for me then because I remember going home with my father. He worked in catering. He didn't have weekends off. My dad used to come to my games in a tuxedo because he'd have to run out. He'd be like Major D-ing a party. It's hilarious. I remember my dad was a ball player and we started playing ball. I'll never forget going to a pickup game, probably around that age. All the kids were playing. I just cleaned up. Like I just came home. I looked at my mom and I'm like, oh my God, I'm good at something. She's like, you're gonna be good at a lot of things. Right. And I'm like, okay. So then that's what started driving me to start pushing that physicality piece. I felt like, all right, well, maybe at that time intellectually I didn't have it, or maybe I wasn't to that standard, but maybe I can just be more physical. And that's what's going to allow me to feel significant. Granted, I become a coach one day. It's just like it reverts into that. But I also realized I started developing this business sense. So I back it up to then because there were some tough times, and I just think that every time something went wrong, there was a way I could fold or I can go work harder. And that's what I think I loved about the health and wellness space was most of the time, I'm not saying always, it's in our own hands, right? My uncle's diagnosed with cancer. It's out of his hands. He's doing what he needs to do. Tough human being, by the way. I'll give you some funny stories talking about mental toughness, but I feel like the majority of the time, if we make good food decisions and we sleep and we train and we do things and we treat people right, good things are going to happen. Like there's not baseball. I can hit balls in the cage for 5 hours till skin came off my hands, which I would do regularly. And it was just like, I'd feel blood coming down my batting gloves. Right. And so there was like stuff going on from a young age. There was just this level of like, I gotta work harder. That's the only thing I can control. So, that's where I think that training and that kind of aggressive piece came in. And then I think there were years where I had to balance that out, right?
Don, you played baseball
In college, yeah.
in college.
Yeah.
Where did you go to school?
Sacred Heart University in Fairfield, Connecticut. It was like a small D1 school, probably had 7,000 people. Well, not that small. I had a great career. I mean, I walked on, had a 70 freshmen coming on. I was a 2-year captain. I started for 3 years. Like I had a great career. I had a great coach. I loved him. And I had a great experience there. It was just, nothing really went wrong in that sense. It was a great 4 years for me. But then things start, you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to go on to the next level. Tried out with a couple of pro teams, Mets, Mariners, and then got picked up to play over in Europe. And I'm like, oh, this is bullshit. Like, this is like, what am I going to do? I'm going to go to Italy. Sounds good. I'm going to learn Italian in 3-4 years, probably meet someone, and then come back and have to start working. Like, this is like, I'm done. And I'll never forget, this is profound. I remember going home to my parents, and I'm sitting with my mom. She's like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I was telling your husband this story. I'm like, I think I'm going to become maybe a cop or an FBI agent. She's like, interesting. I never heard you talk about that. It was never really an interest. I'm like, I don't know if I'm interested in it, but I know they have to train.
Oh.
And she's like, well, what about these trainers? I'm like, can you make a living doing that? She's like, don't worry about it. She's like, you never worried about it. You'll be good at it. You're good at everything. Like, and it kind of came back to that second grade story. I'll never forget right there. It was like this weight came off my back. The next day went into the city, there was no navigation, did not know north, south, east, west, driving through the city, parking my car, leaving it on, locking the doors, taking a spare set of keys, putting a note on the windshield saying, locked out of my car, be right back, getting a spare set. So I didn't get tickets. And I got hired at a big box gym. And I went in and I started cleaning up weights. I wanted to be the person who was best at cleaning up weights.
So you would walk in and be like, here's my resume.
I'm like, hi, I'm Don Saladino. I've got a resume. Are you certified trainer? No, not yet, but I'm working on it. Well, what are you? I have everything down from what I did, where I graduated from. And, I came in, they realized I was a good person. They realized I was well-spoken, and they were like, okay, like if you come through here, we'll put you through this training program. I got hired at almost every place. There was one place I didn't get hired at. I think they just dropped the ball on the application. They were just opening. And yeah, that was it. And then when I went in, I remember I got a job at Equinox. I was a purple shirt, where they're like, all right.
Which means
you're like cleaning up weights and you're assisting customers, just clients. And I'm like, all right, I'm not going to sell them anything, but I'm going to help. So I'm cleaning up weights, saying hi to people, like super pumped, by the way, like moving around, seeing someone doing a push down their arms. Like, can I show you something? I don't want to buy anything. But yeah, I'm not going to sell you anything, but I want to show you something. This works really well for my triceps. You want to see it? Yeah, sure. Show them like, my name's Don. Let me know if you have any questions. I walk off like all happy, right?
That's so huge.
No, but it was what I was doing. And then people were suddenly like, hi, Don. Like, can you start? Like, and I get certified. Like, we'd love to train. Okay, great. Come on in. It's like, I didn't worry about the money piece. I worried about adding value and being great at what I did and being noticed. And like, there were all these things that I wanted to do. And then I felt like, okay, that money piece is going to come. 6 months in, the gym was bought out by this private equity company. So it went from mom and pop location. The Erico family owned it. Month 6, I mean, they cleaned house. All new GMs came in. New GM came in. I'm not going to mention her name. She comes into a trainer meeting with 45 trainers, and she just walks across the floor and she just goes, "You're all expendable." So they're like, "Holy shit! Did she just say that? Are you fucking kidding me?" I'm looking at like Annette Lang, Paul Frediani. These people have like PhDs at the time. They're like big deals. Guys who are in the NFL who are training, who retired. They had a great group of coaches. Everyone's like, "Did she just say that?" I was like, this is terrible. So then obviously we saw that culture change. One of the most valuable lessons I ever learned. I would never deliver it that way, but that's where I got that line, "You're all expendable." I realized like later on, I'm like, I get what she means, because I saw trainers come and go. I saw buddies of mine who were older than me that were like, I'm moving to Colorado. And these people were obsessed with their coach. And then they were turning to me weeks later like, "Oh my God, you're the best coach I ever worked with." I'm like, but you said that to
That
him
guy.
2 months ago. And I was almost like a little like, oh my God, they're going to say that about me one day. And that's where I think everything started for me early on. And it was interesting from there.
When you talked about culture, because you talked about your business,
Yep.
it's interesting to me because you talked about her. And I think about culture a lot. I think about places like, you look at the U.S. Secret Service,
Yep.
or you look at like SEALs, or even like big, like certain companies that people would like trip over themselves to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think it is with culture? Because you brought this up multiple times. Like, what do you try to do? Like when you ran your business, like,
I don't think CEOs or owners of companies need to be assholes. I really don't. Like, I don't think like, I feel like you need to be be a good person, but also, be fair and draw a line. That was something early on too. It's like you're becoming friends with your employees and it's time to put your foot down and you're like, all right, this is weird. So I learned at that time, like, all right, now I know why a lot of these CEOs are coming in for the holiday party and they're leaving early. And they're like doing these things to kind of draw this line. It's not that they didn't want to hang out. It's that they had to draw a line because when push came to shove, you had to make business decisions. And I had to let go of people that I loved. I had to let go of a cleaning guy early on. And when I let him go, he looked at me and hardly spoke English. He looked at me, he goes, basically, for what it's worth, you're my favorite person I ever worked for. And I just had to fire this guy. And I was like, tough things. I had to fire, I had to let go. I don't use the word fired. I had to let go of my head sales guy. I was like, buddy, like, we just can't afford to pay you. He's like, I understand. Like, that stuff's painful to have to do.
Yeah.
And then you start realizing this isn't just about me. Like, this isn't about the money I'm making. This is about, the people who are working under this roof. They've got families. I have a responsibility to them. So I think there was a level of kindness and realness that I wanted to deliver to my staff. I wanted to be there for them, but they also needed to understand when push came to shove, we had to make business decisions.
So what you're talking about is something called warmth and competence. And I speak about it. And a lot of companies will come to me and they'll say, we're having an issue with employees. It's always like managing people. It's not just the outside stuff of business, but the internal. And what people get confused with, it's either I have to be an asshole to get things done, because if I'm too nice, then I'm not going to get things done. People bring the wrong version of themselves. I agree with you. That's why I smiled. Mm-hmm. In fact, when sometimes people say I'm type A, every time I hear somebody say to someone, I'm type A, in my head, I'm clocking it as you're telling them you're type A because you're going to be an asshole. It's type A equals asshole. And so you want to justify why you're going to be an asshole because I'm type A. And when you do that, short term, you'll get what you want. Mm-hmm. You'll squeeze the lemon and get the juice you need. Mm-hmm. That lemon is going to sour on you long term.
Right.
So when you're like that with people, long term, it doesn't work. They resent you. They harbor things against you. What you're talking about is warmth. Warmth is they're not your friends. Your friends, you should be able to count on your hand. Mm-hmm. You're not there to be nice or kind or overly polite, because when you are those things, you get rolled. And when you treat people like your friend, that's when you get confused. Like, oh, now I have to pull back, because I need them to do something. And then they get pissed at you because I thought we were friends.
It's true. And it's unfortunate at the same time, right? Because I'm sure a lot of times you've opened up, or maybe you have or have. I mean, I know I have. And it's like it ends up burning you in the ass. And,
you were talking before, and I was thinking back, even at the U.S. Secret Service, I don't recall, when I was just an agent, there's different ranks. When I was just an agent, I don't recall bosses ever coming out, and I don't drink, but I don't recall them ever coming out and having drinks with the group or anything like that. They come maybe have a lunch or hang out for a bit, and they were gone, the supervisors. Mm-hmm. They didn't stay because they understood I have to tell them what to do. And if they see me as their equal, then I lose that. So it's like this song and dance that you do. But I think it's like understanding, if you treat them like your friend, that's where the problem comes.
I think most of the places, and I agree with you on that, most of the spots that I see in any business, most of the businesses that create a great culture, I normally feel like their leader is kind of like exuding good things, right? Like they've got good principles and they're able to attract good people. And it really does start from the top. So that's really what I focused on. And I think I realized later on that when I would in business with someone and it didn't feel right, or if I had someone working for me and I'm like, oh man, like I can't make this person happy, or they're not doing their job. Let me try and fix it. Almost 10 out of 10 times, I should have just gotten rid of them earlier.
How do you navigate the culture of people around how do you decide who stays and who goes?
From an employee standpoint or from a community standpoint?
From an everything standpoint, because you talked about...
I would break it down two different ways because, I have my employees and then I have now it's my online community. I think in all the years I've had my online community, there was one person I had to excuse because they just became so toxic to the group that my wife and I just refunded that person's money. And we're like, listen, we don't think this is the place for you. Wishing you best of luck. She was bringing everyone else down. Toxic. So I think that's a decision I hope I don't have to make much of. But again, out of the 10,000 plus people that have been in my community, one person, I think that's pretty good.
How do you do it though for your personal circle? Like you, Don Saladino, like how
I've had
do
to
you
do it
stay?
recently. I've had to do it with family members. I've had to do it with training partners. I've had to do it with people who just, I think you start feeling a certain thing, right? Like that just take. And there's something that's very disingenuine and you just feel like they're involved for the wrong reasons. Like you're how I am, your husband's how I am. We're like deposits type of people. Like I appreciate you're doing for me, but like, don't like, let me do for you. Like when you're around people that you love and you care about, you just want to do that. The rest figures itself out. Like you'll know who your friends are when things aren't good.
You're a good reader of people though.
Yeah, I am.
How do you do it? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't know.
You are.
It's just a feeling. I don't know what it is. I can't tell you. I went and I studied this in school, or I just think I had good parents. I saw a lot of shit and went through some tough stuff on my own. And I think, at a very young age, I became a coach and I listened to a lot of people and I surrounded myself with I was around a lot of successful people and I would just listen and they became mentors and things that they said make sense. And I just kind of absorbed it and I grew up. I couldn't do this when I was 27. I think I was more of like a talker rather than a listener.
You think so?
Yeah. I'll admit it. I was quick to respond. My father's favorite line to me when I was 27, I started getting better. But I think my father's line to me when I was a teenager was like, listen before you speak. I heard that more than anything. Listen before you speak. I'm starting to answer. Think before you speak. He would just say these things, and then later on, I'm like, they were always right.
You are a giver though, because I'll share this. I've trained, like, you don't know this about me. I'm going to share a little secret.
Okay.
I worked at Gold's Gym.
I didn't know that.
4 years.
I love it.
I worked at Gold's Gym. I was 17, 18, and I did how did I get that job? Oh no, before that I worked at Benetton. I sold clothes.
I remember Benetton, United Colors of Benetton.
That was me. I was
that.
like, hi, can I help you? That was one of my many part-time jobs that I had. And one of my clients who would come in, she's like, my boyfriend is an owner at Gold's Gym. Do you want a different type of job? And I said, sure. And I was like young, 17 or 18. And I went and I interviewed. They hired me. I was the person behind the counter. I would check you in.
Mm-hmm.
What drink do you want? They had that muscle milk like, oh my God, I should know all of these, the bars and all that stuff.
Where they have steel bars and stuff.
Steel bars. Coconut.
I know the era.
We had coconut.
They were delicious.
Coconut was favorite.
They were delicious.
I was like, how are they healthy?
Oh my God, they were delicious. I remember I would have one. I'd rather
coconut,
have that than
and it was a
Snickers bar.
pink lavender. I know this because I sold these foil. It was my favorite thing.
It was a foil wrapper.
And I used to eat it and I'm like, man, I'm so healthy.
Steel bar. I love those.
The power drinks. And then I would have to walk the floor and clean it. Because sometimes as I had more time there, they would let me lock up the gym and I would clean the floor. And it was a very tight community. And like sometimes like guys would deadlift and then they'd leave 445s on each side on the floor.
The worst.
And I would have to sit there and like pull it out. And the guys would see me. Most of them would come help and they'd help me put the stuff away. But I would like clean the floor.
Yeah.
And I didn't mind. I loved it. I did that job for 4 years. And that was like my exposure to health and wellness and fitness. But
also managing people. I'm sure. Yes.
I learned how to talk to people. I learned how to communicate. I learned how to listen. I also learned how to manage difficult behaviors. The truth, like back then, and I don't know how it is now, a lot of people on the juice.
Yeah.
And I always knew who came in. They'd be like, and I'm like,
smelling on them. It's like terrible.
Get me, I want that. And I'm like, which drink? That one right there. And I like, sometimes I call I had an old school Italian, Salvatore, Sabby would call him. I'm like, Sabby, like one of the owners of the gym. I'm like, Sabby, you can come out, handle this guy. He's like, who's bothering you? Who's bothering you? He had his like Sergio Tacchini outfits. He'd come out.
Yeah.
So they knew not to mess with us. Sabby might have been a little bit connected back then, but that was my first exposure to dealing with people, dealing with all mostly male people. And I think it was also a safe environment, but I also had to learn how to manage myself. So I grew up in a fitness environment, but let me fast forward. I had my daughter later in life and it took me a while to recover and I had a hard time. And this is coming back to you. That's when kind of you came into the picture. Actually, Gabrielle Line came to the picture first. And she's like, I'm going to help you. And I'm like, no, I don't need anything. She's like, I know your type. You don't ask for help. And I'm like, no, you're busy. Like you're dealing with like really, I don't want to say bigger people. I'm like, you don't have time for me. And she's just like, no, I'm going to help you. And then you came into the picture. And it was just like, we connected at Forever Strong. And then you're like, come out to the barn. And I'm like, what the fuck's a barn? I'm like, this guy's got a barn.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh no, it's my facility. So I was like, fuck it. I'll go out there. I'm very humble. I'll learn something. And you did the same thing. You kind of took me under your wing and you're like, let me do a program for you. And I'm like, no, it's okay. And you did. You wrote me a program. And then you're like, hey, can you start sending photos of your food to me? And I was like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, you want to see everything I eat?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, just send me pictures. And I started to do that. And you started making me more accountable for the food. And like, I send you a picture of a cappuccino blast or whatever. And you're like, okay, how about we add some vegetables to that?
Yeah.
How about this?
Or
And
like, how do you feel?
how do you feel?
That's what I'm trying to get you to the point. I'm trying to get you to the point where you can relate what you're eating with a feeling.
It's true. And as I started to clean up my diet, because it came to the point where being a mom and then having all these balls in the air, I was just fueling myself to go. And also because I was older when I had my daughter, my body, I couldn't get back to where I was. But you have no idea how you're a giver and how you gave and how much you've helped me.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's just the truth. And you've
Thank
really
you.
helped me in so many ways that, you know, as a person who understood fitness and wellness, but I needed someone from the outside to come in and be like,
No, I appreciate it.
let's fucking go.
Well, you're
And-
improving.
Well, you didn't crush me either.
No.
I was like, you're like, don't worry, I won't crush you. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
no.
all right. Well, you know what that's amazing too is your workout programs. Can you explain this to me? Because
Yeah.
they're not hard. I don't mean it but they're hard, but they're not hard. I know what you're getting. You design them in such a way that I never expected. I've been trained to like run till you throw up,
right.
do push-ups till you fucking can't feel your arms, do pull-ups till like, you know, and having people be like, you're weak, you're pathetic, the drama queen, fucking get it together. And that's what I would hear, like drama queen, because my hair would come out in the PD and your hair always had to be up.
Mm-hmm.
And if they came down, they made me do like extra push-ups, which
Yeah.
I couldn't even fathom doing after the ones I had to do. And the one instructors, I don't know how they talk to you now, but she was like, you fucking drama queen, get your shit together, get up, get back in rank. Don, I would pray by my locker before the NYPD runs to not be a fallout. Like I was terrified of falling out because they'd pull you out of the ranks. They put you in the middle. They fucking humiliate you. They make everybody about face and they say, you see these pathetic people? They're going to get you killed. Fucking tell them to quit. And like, so I had like this, I don't want to say anxiety, but maybe like this push-pull thing with working out.
Yep.
Where I was afraid to fail. And even running, I was so afraid of falling out. And I took that into the Secret Service. And even after I left, I was like, I got to go run. I can't fall behind. I got to do my pull-ups. And you took a very different approach
Yep.
to training where I was just like, oh, I can do this and not fucking be terrified that I'm going to suck.
Well, I think as a coach, first off, thank you. But like as a coach, you got to recognize who you're working with, right? Like the mental toughness piece, like I kind of assumed you have it based off of what you had to go through. And I think it's very important in your line of work. And I think it's very important for some people, excuse my language, but to eat shit a little bit. And they've got to, you know, I've gone into sets where I'm like literally petrified or, you know, squatting with 3 wheels on my back and going for 30 reps and blood's coming out of my nose. Like I've done that and I actually kind of enjoy it, to be honest with you. And I'm not expecting people to do that. It's how I'm built and it's what I like to do. But I also know from a performance standpoint, if you go at that all the time, at that level, you will not be optimal. It's a fact. You're not going to be, no human being has ever gone in and given 110% every day. It doesn't happen. No one has ever gotten stronger every session. No one has ever improved their run time every run. It doesn't happen. It's never happened. It's impossible. So I think it's understanding that there's working out and there's training. Sometimes we need to work out where it's like, all right, I'm going to do this run and I'm going to envision that someone's attacking my children. And if I don't run under this time, they're going to die. It's like the things I've said to myself when I'm 18 years. It sounds terrible how I motivated myself. And there are other times where it's like 80%, no grinding, 2 to 5 reps in the tank every set, stay right there. That's training. And then in time, you start noticing that your body gets into better shape. You're more consistent with your workouts. You're more consistent with how your body feels. It doesn't hurt as much. I'm 47 now.
48, buddy.
Yeah. Let's go. April 15th, tax day.
We know it's interesting. My mindset was I have to train the way I trained in training.
You're
And
not
what-
going to do it.
And what was
I
happening
don't want you to
is
do it.
I was declining.
Yeah, I don't want you to do it.
And I couldn't sustain it. And then I've never trained with a trainer. 0.
Mhm.
You're my first ever. And you also put in a lot of flexibility stuff. When I saw it on paper initially, I'm like, what's he want me to do?
Yeah.
And then I just saw a complete change in my body, even in the soreness. Like I was sore in places that I was never sore before.
I want you to be malleable with your schedule. When you're raising an 18-month-old and you're married and you're running businesses and you have to travel, which is tough. It's like there are days where I just want you to
I
be able
send
to
you pictures
downshift.
of buffalo wings. I'm like,
I
hey,
know. I know.
and you're like, okay, is there celery with fucking that? And I'm like, yes.
Some of the meals you'll start getting like things start heating up for you where I'll see like 2 or 3 meals in a row and I'm like, okay, come on, come on, come on. Like it's happening. And then out of nowhere, it's like cat blast. I feel like shit. And I'm like, good. Like, no, I want you to really,
Yeah.
I don't want you to give that stuff up. And I'm never going to tell anyone to give things up that they love completely.
Is that where people fail?
Yeah.
Is that how people
Yeah.
don't do this?
It's that New Year's resolution. It's biting off more than you can chew early on. It's setting an expectation where I'm giving up alcohol. I'm like, okay, listen, alcohol's terrible for you. Let's be very clear here. Is it a problem? How often do you drink? Oh, this is a great story. There was a Victoria's Secret model that was working out at my gym that like comes into my office one day, sitting there with my GM, Kim. And she, oh my God, I'm losing it. I'm like, what happened? What happened? What's going on? Oh my God, I'm having a glass. I'm drinking every night and I'm having dessert every night. I'm like, well, how much? She's like, a glass of wine. Okay, well, how much dessert? Like a fork of cake or a fork of dessert. And I'm like, well, are your measurements off? She's like, no. Like, what's your booker saying? Are they upset? Like, are you not looking good in pictures? Like, she's like, no, my booker's happy. Can I ask you a personal question now? She goes, what? I go, how do you feel you look naked? She looks at me, she goes, look pretty good. What's the fucking problem? Like, what are you doing? Why are you panicking over this? Like, if you can still take somewhat of a minimalistic approach, train, feel good. I'm like, are you happy? She's like, yeah, I'm losing it a little bit because I feel like I'm doing something wrong. I'm like, you're not doing anything wrong. I'm like, when those 3 things that I just listed, something starts going in a bad direction, it's affecting your mood, your energy, your body composition. If your booker, someone is like telling you, no, you're not going to, like, fine, then we can have that conversation, but fuck off. Like, seriously, like, you're doing just fine. And she realized it was just her getting in her own head. So I think what happens come New Year's is people will turn around and they'll set this program, 90 minutes. This is how Don trains. This is how Don eats. And I'm like, don't do that. Like, you might be able to show an incredible amount of success. I'm going to give you another quick story. My buddy John came to me. He's 50 years old and he takes his shirt off and he goes, I just want to see my top 2 abs. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I've never heard anyone say that to me. I said, all right. I said, well, let's just go through your nutrition. I know your training's been good because you're training here. And I've removed a couple of things. He's like, that's it? I'm like, that's it. Like, we cut his drinking down from like 5 days to 1 or whatever it was. His desserts got eliminated maybe 1 day a week or 2 and protein adjusted a little bit. And like a month later, he came back in, he took his shirt off. He's like, holy shit, look.
I could see.
And I started seeing this line and he just looks at me and he said like the magic words. He goes, all right, what's next? Because when he was talking to me early on, he was saying, I can't do what you do. So I'm like, okay, so we're not going to, but let's show you a level of success. Let's get you. It's easy to motivate someone when they see progress. Like when you start seeing and feeling progress, like it does get easier. So you show people some progress. Don't give them like the perfect plan or what you think is your plan. Like meet them somewhere that they're going to be able to be successful and then build on that. And they might say those magic words to you, what's next? And when they do, then you're like, all right, I got you. That's it. And then it becomes a lifestyle. Then I want you to go to Vegas. And if you want to blow it out once in a while, do it. And if you want to go to Joe's Pizza downtown and eat a pizza pie with some friends and have some beers, do it. Don't think of that as falling off the plan. Think of that as part of the plan. Part of the plan is also the next day getting back on it. People give up. They'll go do that. And they're like, oh, I'm done. Like I said, I messed the whole thing up. I'm like, no, you didn't. Like, we're going to eliminate the amount of mistakes from last year. You made 250 days or 250 mistakes, 250 times where you had cheats. Now we're only having 75 times. Like, that's an improvement. But you got to keep it on the rails. Like, don't listen to this bullshit. These tabloids and these writers who are like, F the cake or have the cake or do this and do. I'm like, yeah, and you're doing that for 2 straight weeks and then you gain 10 pounds. Like, there's got to be an agreement that you make with yourself. There's got to be a little bit of a deal.
So where do people, so I'll tell you this, like a lot of people come to me, they're sad, they're depressed, and it's always seems to be correlated to me and I need to lose weight, but they can't get there.
Yeah.
You've trained a lot of people.
Yeah.
And you work with a lot of people. So
Yeah.
I assume you've seen patterns.
Yeah.
What are the patterns that people have that get it done versus the people that don't get it done?
I think we got to bite off one thing at a time, right? So I would always say if there's 6 massive things you need to change, and when I say massive, hydration, getting more protein, minimizing processed foods, working on improving sleep. Like these are just seem like basic things. Like if I'm going to throw over these 4 things or 6 things at someone on day one, like if they've been struggling to process these things over time, like they're not going to get it done. So I'll turn around and be like, do me a favor this next month, like as we're training, like, can you just focus on hydration? And like, great, what else? I'm like, just hydration. Like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, half your body weight in ounces. Let's just start there. You weigh 200 pounds. Let's get 100 ounces of water a day. I'm only getting 20. Great. Let's get 40 starting tomorrow. Why don't you want to get me to 100? Let's work our way up. Let's take the next 4 weeks and work you to that point, and let's make this habit. 4 or 5 weeks go by. They're like, I'm nailing the water. It's easy. I feel better. I said, great. What do you want me to work on now? Your protein's really low. Can we start bumping that a little bit? Well, how am I going to do that? Well, let's just add a shake in this at this time of day. Well, that's not enough. I know it's not enough, but we're going to work your way up. Right? It's like this. It's like the individual comes to me and they're like, "Oh, I'm not hungry. I can't have breakfast." I'm like, "Okay, can we just start with an egg and some fruit?" Well, it's only 6 grams of protein. I thought you said, Gabrielle said we have to have 30 grams of protein. I'm going to work you to it. Can we just start there and start building?
Do you know what that's called?
No, what?
It's called small victories.
I like that. Yeah.
There's a term for this. I spoke at the World Economic Forum here. I did an event where I spoke, and one of the presenters that went up after me, she was a Stanford professor. So she got up and spoke, and she was talking about what makes a successful CEO, and she was throwing out the big names, like the big companies. And she said, do you know what they all did? She's like, what makes people successful in achievement is small victories. They don't try to go to here. They create a small victory and they achieve that, and then they achieve another one and another one. She said, what small victories show you is success. It builds your confidence, and then you can do a little more. So there's an actual
That's it.
term, and it's exactly what you do.
Yeah.
You didn't realize it's Stanford professor. You do small victories.
Small victories, yeah.
And then you're able to get them to the next level.
Yeah. It's almost like progressive overload with weight training, right? It's like that's something where we're just going to slowly increase. Like you look at like, I think the world's strongest man who set the powerlifting record, I think he improved his total number of power lifts. 3 movements, he improved like 5 pounds total in over 2 years. Think about how much work and time and how many people would have given up on that, right? Like that's at like, I think that's at like this level that most people can handle. But talk about taking your time and small victories every day to try and hit that goal. Like I'm asking someone to make a change that is significant. If you go from getting 20 ounces of water a day and you need 100 according to your body weight, that's going to change your life. If we
Why? How? I'm not trying to be funny.
No, it's going to flush toxins out of your body. It's going to detoxify your body. It's going to help with sleep quality. It's going to help with energy. It's going to help with your skin. It's going to help with your mood. I mean, hydration's tied to like everything. If you're dehydrated, which a lot of people are, big problems come from that. So just by focusing on hydration right now, fine. Maybe we're not fixing the other, 10 things, but we'll take one thing at a time every month, or even like when I'm moving someone's calories up, like someone comes to me and they're eating 800 calories a day and they need to be consuming 2,000. Like, but I want to lose weight. And I'm like, yeah, but we can't lower your calories anymore. The human body's smart, right? Did I give you the car analogy ever? I'm going to give it to you anyway if I have, because I want everyone to hear.
You have, but I like the car
I'm going to give this. So
and I like the shoveling analogy.
Yeah, no, shoveling analogy is good too. But like the car analogy, like if you get in a car and start driving and that fill up gas light pops on and you don't pull off, like you're going to run out of gas. Like cars aren't really smart. They'll just shut off. The human body, as you start putting yourself into a caloric deficit and you start lowering your calories because you want to lose weight, there's a certain period of time where like your body's going to be like, enough, like you're not giving me enough gasoline for the trip. And then your energy is going to start dropping, and then your body's going to start making adjustments to utilize the amount of gas that's in the tank. Oh my God, you're only putting 1,000 calories and I need 2,000 calories for today's trip. I'm just going to slow down. I'm going to want to sit more. My mood's going to drop. Less non-exercise activity. Thermogenesis is a fancy word everyone's throwing around right now. It's just movement. I'm sitting here. I'm like an Italian. I'm talking with my hands. That's neat. It's me just sitting here. Like I can't sit still. That's neat. So that's
good.
Yeah. We're burning calories. Like I'm talking, like I'm like practically sitting here sweating. I look like I'm a mess. So I'm just like that's just from my energy being high. I was laughing. I was on a podcast. Someone commented, they were like, is this guy on cocaine? I was like, nice. Like I can read the comments, but that's neat. But
It's your energy.
it's my energy, but as your calories drop, your energy is going to drop, right? Things are going to start, going failing. Things are going to start going to sleep. That's the way I like to describe it. So we can't always be in this massive deficit. We have to allow our body to consume nutrition and be powerful and want to have higher levels of energy. And that takes time to train. So sometimes it takes me months to start bringing someone's calories up. And they're like, but I want to lose weight. And I'm like, trust me. And the next thing you know, they're like, I lost 2 belt sizes. I'm like, okay. A couple of weeks later, what else? I have more energy. I set PRs in my run time. Like, okay, what else? My steps are up. What else? Weeks later, it's like my sleep's improving. I'm like, great. Don't worry about the scale. That's something I call non-scale victories, NSVs. Out of nowhere, we start fixing these things. And then that thing that you think is important, the scale or your body composition, that just starts improving because of your actions. So that's really how I try and approach nutrition. Do I get people into deficits? Sure, if I have a short period of time to prep someone for a movie, I'll get them in a deficit. I'm more concerned though with making sure that they're hitting maintenance calories and their body is burning fuel the way it needs to burn fuel. And then I could decide to go up with calories if they need to put muscle on, or reduce calories by a little bit if they need to, tighten up a bit.
One of the things that you're known for also, like there's so many things, like, you're an entrepreneur, you train people, you also do mindset and performance. We'll talk about that in a moment, but you also train quite a few celebrity clients. How do you get to that? Because I know a lot of people wonder, like, how do you get from being some kid in Long Island whose parents are in the catering business to the point where you're not just an entrepreneur who owns a gym, but like you're also training people?
I didn't look for it. I got to be honest. I mean, I was trying to build my business. So when we opened Drive in 2005, it was a golf fitness facility. My brother was a professional golfer. We went through all the Titleist Performance Institute training. We were like the first level 3s to graduate. We were doing kinematic sequencing and doing swing analysis and a screening and training people to where they were working with our golf pros. We had 10 golf pros working upstairs, in the simulator areas. And then '07 came when like Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns shit the bed. We're doing events at Drive. We kind of had a liquor license at the time, made a fudge for a while.
That's the Italian Greek coming out in
no,
you.
it's like, so we're like throwing parties and we're making cash and we're like, it's getting us through, the first few years. And then out of nowhere, like the whole financial market changed, corporate spending changed. It was actually like, I will pat myself on the back there. I remember looking at my brother being like, I think we're in trouble. Like we have to adjust our model. I think we're going to lose this. And he's like, I think you're right. Corporate spending went away. It became a complete bitch to get a company like Goldman Sachs to come in and spend $10,000 a night on hosting clients and food and booze and golf pros, and like that was gone. Like we were doing it, but now it just was minuscule. That was at about the time where a buddy of mine came in to Drive, and he was like, "Can I bring in Hugh Jackman? I know you don't allow outside clients." And I'm like, "Yeah, definitely." I'm like, I know of him. I mean, he was big, but he wasn't where he is today. I remember Hugh saw me train. I lived in this performance physique world. I was a rotational athlete. I was working in this like,
what's a rotational
meaning
athlete?
like I worked with golfers, baseball players, hockey players, a rotational
Gotcha.
sport athlete. It's just a fancy term. I was trying to impress
I'm
you.
not fancy.
Sorry.
I may look like I
Yeah,
am,
I was
but
trying
I'm
to
not.
impress you there. So we had a conversation. He saw me train one day and he came to me and he was like, "I'd love to train with you." And I was like, "No." He's like, "Why?" I'm like, "You're training with my buddy Rico. Like you're asking me on a date right now. You're dating my friend." He's like, "No, you don't understand." And I kind of like moved away. I thought he was like cheating on Rico. He wasn't. Rico was moving. Rico just didn't have the conversation we had. I went to Rico. I'm like, "Rico, what's going on? Are you going somewhere?" And he's like, "Oh, dude, I'm having triplets." What are you talking about? He's like, "You got to work with Hugh." I was like, "Yes, I'll work with Hugh." And that's when it started for me. So Hugh came in and we started working together. And it was just, I literally was like going to his house, getting his food. We were doing double sessions, but we were structuring it differently to where he was. He had 2 young kids at the time, probably 17 years ago. And I remember him turning to me and there was no social media. He's like, "You want to do some press? Love to do some press for you, Donnie. I love you like this and that." I'm like, "No, I'm not going to do any press." He's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Hugh, we got a job to do, man. I don't have time for this shit. You don't have time for this shit. This is a safe place for you. Just keep your head down and let's work." And he was like, it's probably stupid of me, but like he then went and did some press for me. And then I think it was actually a really good thing because the word got out of nowhere. Like the barricades were like dropped. Just people, I was getting calls every week. I can't even tell you the names, and everyone in there from Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to Sandra Bullock to, I worked with Jennifer Aniston to Scarlett Johansson. I mean, on and on and on and on. There wasn't a day where we didn't have someone in there of like a high stature, but I had rules. You're not pulling out a phone. You're not asking for an autograph. I had a female client once go to Jim Parsons and she asked for a picture and I grabbed her and I pulled her in my office with my GM, who was a woman. I said, don't ever do that again. I pay for membership. I don't give a shit if you pay here. Do that again, I'll refund your membership. You're out of here. It's the culture we created here. They feel safe and protected. Don't ever do that again. Can't believe you're talking about this. Whatever. She stayed as a member. It is what it is. But I told her, you're not doing this. And that's what I created there. And then later on, I felt like, because they knew how I was, I never asked a client to do social media for me. Like it was something I was even to this day, I'm like, I don't want to like infringe.
Yeah.
I feel bad. I don't want it to be to that point. But if they feel like I'm doing a good job, they know it's going to help. A lot of them like to do it for me.
But a lot of people like to give.
They do. And I found I surrounded myself with the people who are like us.
But you're a giver.
Yeah, 100%.
You are 100% like.
So are you.
Yes.
So.
But there's balance.
There has to be.
There's balance.
Otherwise you get, you end up feeling pretty bad about yourself because you're.
Not everyone's that way.
Yeah.
Most people are takers. And I think you probably over time, and myself, I had to learn like, if it's too much take, then there's an imbalance and then I'm imbalanced. And then when you learn to kind of respect and honor yourself, you find that balance, but you're a giver. Like you help me more than you know.
Thank you. Well, back at you. Listen, this is great. I didn't ask, like, this is awesome. This is fun.
But because you give so much and I'm like, in my head, I'm like,
I'm not expecting it, but thank you.
What am I doing for Don?
That's awesome.
But I feel like, but that's how you create like this synergy. And obviously like Gabrielle loves you and Gabrielle's super solid.
Oh my God. But Gabrielle and I have what like we're developing and your husband. It's like, it's a nice thing. When you start surrounding yourself with people like that, it's not about like, honestly, I'm not insulting. It's not about the podcast. It's just about being around good people that make you feel good.
It's about giving value.
Yeah.
You said something earlier and it resonated with me. You said, and I didn't get to touch on it because you were talking and then it slipped my mind, but you said something when I started doing stuff, I didn't look for the money.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed that when I get like, I've had agents here, Secret Service, CIA, and everybody has that same theme. I didn't chase the money. And it's so antithesis to what you hear today. Because and I'm not knocking on anybody else's podcast or show, but everything is the car, the this, the that, the money. What are you bringing in? And I have found that those power players are the people that I have surrounded myself with and that have helped me have never chased the money. I'm not, don't get me wrong. I believe when you put the value out, the wealth will come on its own.
Sure.
But when you chase the wealth, then that's all you're chasing. And to go back to the World Economic Forum, when that same professor who got up there and she spoke to the group of CEOs, and I was talking about this with my husband when we were driving in this morning. She got up there and she talked about the small victories, which we just talked about. And she got up there and she said, you are out there trying to solve a problem. If you are out there with the sole goal to make money, she's like, you will not succeed long term. When you look at all these people that have true wealth in the world, when they sought out to create something, they were not seeking out to how much money I'm going to make. They were seeking out what problem can I solve, whether it's connecting people, Facebook, or whether it's getting people to connect on a LinkedIn through business, or whether it's through tech or whatever it was. She's like, they were all looking to solve a problem in the world. And if you focus on that, the wealth comes. She's like, if you just focus on the money, it doesn't sustain.
Right. And there's certain people online like right now who are very open about it. Like there was a book I was kind of breezing through recently, very successful businessman. And he flat out said it. He's like, no, I am money driven. And what's challenging about that is you see someone at that level who's making that type of money and a young 25-year-old is like, well, that's what I have to do. Right. And it's not like the thing I've learned in my life. And maybe at 25, I'm reading that going, oh man, am I doing something wrong? But I'm comfortable enough now where I can read that and say, that's his plan. That's not mine.
That's not my plan.
And then I found myself surrounding myself with people who are just more like-minded. Like one of my really good buddies, not mentioning his name, just went in and bought a G5.
What's a G5?
It's a private plane.
Oh, that's why I don't know what a G5 is.
But pulls up to my house in a Wrangler and doesn't tell anyone about the G5. And, people ask what he does. And He looks like a coach. He doesn't look any different. And I love it because no one has any idea. Under the table, he's not wearing some $100,000, $200,000 watch, wearing an Apple Watch. Subtle, nice. Like I just, for some reason, I feel like I'm attracted to people like that. It's more attractive to me that when I see someone who has that type of success and money, they don't want anyone to know about it. I think that's cool.
Because you know what you are.
Yeah.
You don't need everybody to know that you are that.
Right. If you handed me, and I'm sorry, if you love sport cars, God bless you. They're beautiful. But if you handed me a Ferrari right now, I'd probably sell it and go buy like an old muscle car
Dude,
or something.
I would sell it too. I wouldn't
or
want
like
to
an old
drive that
Jeep.
thing in New York City. It's
I
gonna
would
have
feel-
dents and
Yeah, but I would also feel bad. Like I would also feel, I know too many people who are going through too much shit. It's even when people run, how are things going? I'm like, yeah, things are good. Then I'll run to people, how are things going? Amazing. I'm like, okay, like I'm glad they're going so good for you. But the person next to me I know has just lost their job and their wife has cancer. So calm it down a little bit. It's just my thought process.
Well, I'll tell you, like I worked in the White House and I was always exposed to, and although I was a Secret Service agent, to some people we were like the help. I was always exposed to people who had very high net wealth, very unhappy individuals,
Yeah.
very angry individuals.
Yeah.
Just like I always saw like this kind of underneath part where I was just like, and I knew I'm like, that's not it. That's not, what is going to sustain you. You can't fucking take it with you anyway.
No.
Like it doesn't go. Like don't get me wrong. Like there's certain things like I may like, but at the same time, it's like I think I'm drawn to people who are not driven by that.
Yeah.
And they're performers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're performers, and I respect that and I honor that.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too.
Yeah.
Totally agree with you.
Having said that, so you've trained all sorts of people
Mhm.
in your career, in you training others. Like, what's people's greatest weakness to not achieving to the things that they say they're going to do?
That's such a good question.
Like, how do you know who's got it and who doesn't?
I mean, when I'm talking to someone, you kind of like, are you gonna do what you have to do to get there? Like, is this for a job or is this for life? It's like I think it's understanding who I'm working with. If I'm working with Ryan Reynolds and he's preparing for a role, and it's in 4 weeks, and we have work to do. It's like, all right, dude, this is your job. You got to do this. If it's like someone else coming in and they're like, oh, I just want to get healthy and I just want to feel good and I want to feel energetic. Like, there's 2 answers to that question, right? Like, one, we got to go in there and I'm like, you're not doing any of that. Like, you're doing this. He's the worst example because the guy will eat cardboard if you tell him to. He's just like so driven. On the other hand, that other person, why am I going to go in there with that exact same plan when they don't need it? Maybe training fixes a lot. Maybe just the fact that they're exercising now with you 2 to 3 days a week fixes a lot. Maybe improving hydration fixes a lot. Maybe we just build slowly over time. I think there are limitations people put on themselves before they come in, right?
What do you hear? What are the best excuses you hear?
I heard a funny one the other day. It was actually from someone that I'm close with. He turned around. He goes, well, I got to get rid of this. But I do better than most 56-year-olds. I was like, dude, come on, man. Like, really, like, you're comparing yourself to other people your age now? Like, let's go. That's why I created my challenges. It's not a challenge against anyone else. I'm challenging you. I'm challenging you to go from 5 cap blasts a week to 2.
I did go to 2.
I know.
It's painful.
But it's a challenge.
They missed me at Dunkin' Donuts. I'm going to put that video in this show.
That was one of the funniest things I've ever heard, by the way. The woman's like, where is she? Like,
I walked into
this hurts
Dunkin'.
my heart. She's not here anymore.
And she's like, where? They were all upset with me. Like, where have you been? I said, well, I've been working a lot. And like, there's this guy, Don, and he told me I can only go like heavy. And she's like, what did he say?
She looks so angry at me too.
She was so pissed off. She's like, you're not coming in. I'm like, well, I'm trying to get healthier. She's like, I have a message for Don. She's like, pull the video up. So we'll put that in. Hey, Don, I'm at Dunkin' and they're very upset with me.
I'm very upset with her because she's not coming too much. I miss her so much. She's my heart, my kidney, my liver, everything. She's all my favorite. Don't do that, please. Let her to come all the time.
She was not happy.
You should put that. It was funny.
Yeah, it was awesome. But I cut you off. The weaknesses. I'm comparing yourself to another 56-year-old.
Yeah, I think we also start setting these expectations like, well, I'm not in college anymore. Well, I'm 40. Well, I'm 50.
Oh, dude, I love this one. Somebody very close said this to me, and I wanted to wring his neck because I love him, but I'm not going to expose him.
Right.
The dad bod's in, and I'm like.
Yeah, I don't know. I think our mind, I've seen some extraordinary things by people. I don't say, oh, that are seasoned. Right? It's like a term I use. Like, they're like a guy who's 70 years old or 80 years old and great job. I a buddy of mine, founder of Tommy Hilfiger, hopped up on a pull-up bar in his early 70s and hit like 10 tactical pull-ups to his throat. And I was like, damn, like that's most 25-year-olds can't do that with that type of form. So what are we doing here? Why are we setting this bar? Why are we saying this limitation? Why are we immediately coming into the game with a handicap? Like, oh, I can't do this. Like, I think people give up. I think they give up.
Why do you think they give up? Do they feel like they don't have to? Do you
I
think?
think people around them are telling them. I think society is like, well, you're getting older. I had a client come to me when I turned 40, 7 years ago, and he saw me doing handstands. And he came to me, he's like, I want to talk to you. Like, uber wealthy guy, finance guy, probably at the time in his late 60s. He's like, when are you going to start slowing it down? I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, man, I saw you squatting like 400 pounds the other day. Like, you just absolutely killing yourself. You're 40 now. When are you going to start slowing yourself down? I'll make the name up. I'm like, hey, Rick, let me tell you a story about a guy I know. This guy I know is probably worth $750 million. He's in his car every morning. He gets in here by 7 a.m., 6 a.m., whatever the time was, has his driver. He's out the door before people are coming in. He's driving in an hour and a half, 2 hours from Jersey. And he's doing this for what? He doesn't need the money. And he just looks at me and he goes, fuck you, Donnie. And he just laughs. And I go, exactly. Like, this is part of who we are. It's part of that energy that we get. It's part of who, I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah, part of what makes me feel significant about myself. Sure. I had some baggage since I was a young kid. This is part of what has trained me to feel good. This is part of maintaining my mindset in life. It's not about a bicep. And when I'm killing myself on intervals this morning, it's not about like, oh, I have to be at 5% body fat. No, I need to leave there today knowing that I did what I needed to do to be successful with everything else in life. Then everything else is gravy. Then I could be a good husband, a good dad, hopefully a good podcast.
You are.
Thank you.
Do you know, it's interesting you talk about how it helps your mind, because I just did an event the other day with Jamila Jamil. She's an actress from The Good Place, and she did a whole event about move your mind. Now, she's big on diet culture, meaning like she's very against it. I understand, like, she's talking about the fads and all that, but she also talked about like we need to start moving our bodies because, reduces anxiety, reduces depression, which is also against the theme now where it's like, hey, it's okay, eat the cake, or it's okay to do this, or it's okay, you don't have to. I understand accepting your body as it is and not trying to compare it, but I wonder if maybe this whole mindset of accepting myself as and being unhealthy is making my mind and everything unhealthy.
I think we're doing ourselves a disservice. I think a lot of these publications went in a completely wrong direction. I think that, the word empowerment got thrown around, and I think that's a great word, right? But I think it's also like, no, at a certain point, if you eat fast food every day, or if you eat cake every day, like these things, like you're going to put on body fat. This can lead to a very unhealthy lifestyle. I'm sorry. It's just like we need to find that happy medium. And what she was saying about the fad diets, I completely agree with. They're like, what's this one diet? I think years ago I'm gonna actually try. I think it was the Whole30, and I'm like, what is it? I'm like, they're like, Whole30. What does that mean? They were like, oh, it's like no processed foods and high protein and slow burning carbohydrates. And I'm like, so they name that now? I've just been calling that the healthy way of eating diet. How do you eat? It's like, I don't know. There's no like diet. Like, I don't know. If I was to coin like a great diet, like I think the Mediterranean diet is like, yeah, I think
high five right there.
Yeah, no, but I think that's like, if you were to ask me, like, if there's any diet out there that someone should follow, I think that's amazing.
Well, I'll tell you, when I go to Greece, very rarely do you see obese people. It might be shifting a little bit now because they do have some processed food coming in, but definitely when you go to the islands, like my great grandmother lived to like 112 or 114.
What?
Yeah. My grandmother lived into her 90s.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, but they moved. They like they fucking climb mountains. My Aunt Georgia, I was trying to figure out when my dad passed away, I don't know how to say it in English, Jorafia, what fields or what crops were ours. And they're like in the woods. And I'm like, Aunt Georgia, like, where are these fields? And she's like in her 70s, 80s. She's probably in her 80s. She's like, oh, I'll take you. And she just starts hiking up these mountains. And it's like, and I think my husband was with me and he's super fit and I was there and we couldn't like keep up with her.
Yeah.
She was just like going on an incline and I'm watching her and her calves are like flexing. And I'm like, holy cow, because she's always led a life of movement. And and I bring it back to like what I'm asking you, because what I hear too, and like from the agencies that recruit people, like an agency like U.S. Secret Service, it's not just mine. Like you have to be physically fit to get in. Like you have to pass certain standards. NYPD, you have to pass physical standards. Military, like they're actually What I'm hearing is they're low on numbers. They're having a hard time to get people who can get in,
into shape, yeah, because
who can pass the physical fitness standards.
It's a problem. I mean, it's it's a problem that the numbers are low. Obviously, I mean that's
So is it
upsetting.
this?
I think it's 100% that. I think when someone comes to me and they're like, it's 80% nutrition or 20% training, I'm like, this is all 100% mental. It's just kind of been my line. I don't know if it's 80% training or 80% nutrition because I see people respond differently. My training partner, one of my best friends, was shot 11 times and stabbed twice. It's from a really bad area. Shot 9 times in the 9mm, twice with a double barrel shotgun. And then his worst wounds were his stab wounds. He's 62 now. I had to rehab him when I met him. It was really funny. It's been like a 20-year process, but the guy will do 5 pull-ups with almost 200 pounds around his waist. That's 62 years old. I can't do that. He eats like complete shit. His blood works great, and he takes his shirt off, and I will never look like him. I'm like, good God, like you have a 28-inch waist. Like you're an anomaly. Like the guy's unbelievable. And he just laughs at me. But, for him, like bloods are good. He's healthy. The guy's, got floating bullets in his body and gets MRIs and doesn't give a shit. And he's, I call him Iron Fist. So it's like, some people just respond differently to different things. And, I just, that's probably why there's so many opinions out there on what works and what doesn't work, because you'll have one influencer saying, look at what I do. I do the ketogenic diet. And this one's like, no, but I do the paleo diet. We both have 4% body fat. Who's right? Like we just respond differently to different things. And that's why there's not like a holy Bible, like a holy grail that you're like here. I think the closest thing to it that I read that I completely agree with would be Gabrielle's book. Her most Forever Strong. That was like from a nutritional standpoint. I was just like, please start here. Like I almost want to give it to every one of my challenges. Just be like, just read this first.
When you do your challenges, like you have a community.
Yeah.
And I've actually spoken to your community. And my husband's going to be speaking to your community.
Loved you.
How did you start that? Because you've had this now for a number of years. Like, what is it exactly?
Crazy story. So COVID, Monday, March 16th at 8 p.m., they're like, gyms are closing. I'm like, nice. I'm like, here we go. Like my business is shut down, but we're hearing about PPP. My wife looks at me and she's like, you got to create a program. She was so smart. She's like, everyone's going to be calling you in the next week. So I'm like, you're right. So I literally went into the living room. We like moved all the furniture. My hair was like out to here. I had like a big like fro going and I had a sleeveless shirt and there was no equipment. So I literally sit up for a few hours and I write this 4-week body weight program. And she comes in with the iPhone and she films it all. And I'm like, all right, you got to load this onto something. She's like, I'll load it onto Dropbox. I'm like, great. And then the next, whatever it was the next month, I got a call from, I think every publication, like everything from Cosmo to, Muscle and Fitness to Men's Health to Women's Health.
Why?
They were like, can you give us like no one, like people are losing jobs. People are losing jobs. Can you give us like an arm workout or an ab workout, something for free? And I'm like, I'll do better than that. I'll give you a 4-week like progressive with video. It's yours. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, this is worth something. I'm like, just take it. And they went to my email to sign up. So in that 4 weeks, we collected 200,000 emails in that 4-week period of time. And then I swear to God, strike me dead if I'm lying right now. I did roughly between 120 and 140 real-time workouts in 30 days. Because every media outlet wanted to do like, would you do a live? Remember everyone's doing lives?
Yes, on Instagram and on.
So 45-minute live. So I think like the first week, I think I had COVID. Like I didn't know, we didn't test for it. And my wife's like, you got I'm like, what are my lives? She's like, you got 9 a.m. Men's Health, 10 a.m. Muscle Fitness, 11 a.m. Cosmo, 12 all the way through. I'm like, okay. And I would go into these lives, like real time, like follow alongs. I'd work out on my own beforehand because I was a psychopath and I thought I had to do my own weights, which I brought that out there. And like we do a 45-minute class and I'd have to run upstairs because by the time the class was starting, I was so sick, like I was pouring sweat. And I'm like, I'm not going to cancel. This is like, I got to step up. So I'd be running upstairs, showering and coming back down, being like, hi guys, like talking and like sweat's pouring down my face. And I'm like a complete mess. And I'm like literally going through a dynamic warm up and like sweat's beating off my face. Is hilarious. But like, I couldn't, like, I think that month I lost like 10 pounds and I was like, wasn't sleeping. And like, twitching in my sleep. My wife's like,
You don't call out sick.
no, I can't. But like,
We
we don't
on the
like,
president's detail, you couldn't call out sick. There was no such thing.
how? You know what? Everyone, no one gives the actors enough credit. Like everyone thinks there's like, I've seen Ryan on set like half dead in the past. Like anyone else, their nose is running and they're taking off. Like, no, they're not going to put on hold the shoot today because he has walking pneumonia. They're not going to do that. Like, they got to man up. I mean, the actors for me, I will flat out say something and it's going to piss a lot of people off. Is it more difficult? Is it more challenging to work with an actor or an athlete? Actor. Don't even argue with me on it. I don't care. I will say that with the utmost level of certainty. First off, what you're normally training for is something they're not used to, right? Like he's learning sword fighting. He didn't grow up sword fighting. Like Tom Brady is playing football since he's a young kid. He doesn't know his schedule. Got one game a week. He knows the time zone changes. Ryan or Sebastian or Emily, like they're shooting a role in like Bangladesh. And then 3 weeks after it's over, they're in Dubai and they're away from their family. And then suddenly a camera goes down or someone's mom dies and they have to fly out and put it on hold and all these things get delayed. They're supposed to get off the set one night at 6 p.m. They're not off till 11 p.m. They have to be up at 4 to train and go back to work and do it again. It is crazy. It is nuts. And then they have to change their body composition. Like what I do is like, I'm sitting down with people. Like my first question is, what do we have to create here? Like Dave Harbour in Hellboy or Liev Schreiber in Chuck. He's playing up like Liev Schreiber, who's Ray Donovan. I was training him for years. He had to go into a role. So I was like, oh God, we got to put body fat on. Like we have to actually move you in the reverse direction. Or Joaquin Phoenix has to, gain 40 to 50 pounds for one role. And then right at the date that rolls over, he's got to lose it all over the next 2-3 months. Like it is not like, this is not something I signed up for. It's just something that I help people do in the healthiest fashion.
I guess actors listen to you though, maybe because they're very mission focused. I have this shoot, I have this job,
Yeah.
and I have to get there.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe the average person who comes to you is kind of like a bit ambiguous. I want to be healthy, and maybe it's not very clear to them where
There's
they're
a little bit
going.
more stress with the actor, right? Like they know that their ass is on the line. They know they're going to be naked or shirtless, and they know their reputation's on the line. And they're like, no, they want to look good. Also, I find that the training piece of it, when you start changing their body comp and you empower them to really be strong and own it, they start becoming that character a little bit easier. I trained this guy, Dave Harbour. He's in Stranger Things for Hellboy. And Hellboy, he was in a prosthetic suit. People are like, well, why are you training him? I'm like, well, he had bad back injuries early on. He couldn't pick up a 24 kilogram kettlebell. 9 or 10 weeks later, he pulled like 400 pounds off the ground. We allowed him to be resilient. But I remember him telling me, he's like, when I got on that horse in Bulgaria and I had the suit on, I just felt powerful.
So of all the things that you experienced and done, what's the biggest lesson you've learned?
I think there's this word called patience that a lot of young kids nowadays are, I think, reaching out to me on DMs and they're saying, well, I want to do what you do. And I should just copy and paste this like long, like couple of paragraphs of like, well, okay. And we were joking earlier. Well, you got to eat shit for a while. And, I think now the advantage that we have is that you really can go through mentorship programs. And if you find the right people, like, God, I wish I was reading your book when I was starting off, right? I wish I knew you and Des when I was starting off. I wish I knew Gabrielle when I was starting off. Like I had to figure things out differently. And now you have these resources. People can take advantage of this. Spend the money on it. Buy the book. Sign up for the program that you have. Listen to these people. Oh my God. Like back in 99, I was reading the Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding, thinking that was like by Arnold Schwarzenegger, learning stuff, but being like, what else is there? Reading supplement guides. We have so many good tools at our fingertips right now. But I think let's not neglect hard work. Let's not get rid of those words because you need to work hard no matter what you're doing. I feel like it's important that you're passionate about what it is you do, right? And I think sometimes things are not going to go your way. And there's a level of patience and being malleable and understanding that, all right, if you can go down this road and there's a roadblock, are you going to turn around and go back or do you have to get to your destination? I've always been personal. Like, I got to get to my destination. How do we figure this out? How do I bring people aboard that are smarter than me? How do I reinvest? Most people want to make the money that they're making and put in their pocket. I'm like, how do we up our game? Drives my wife nuts. She's just like, come on, really? Like, are we doing?
Mel's a business.
She is. Mel's we're a great balance. Mel's a spreadsheets person. she'll run through spreadsheets and she's like this, and that. I'm like, yeah, but we need this. And we'll kind of
Meet in the middle.
and we meet in the middle, and it's worked well for us. It's a very good. It's funny how my wife ends up being my best business partner ever. You know, she's got the goods when it comes to that stuff, and it's a good team.
You know, in my book, you brought up my book, I did a chapter on all the things that I learned from every person I protected, like what virtue I learned. So from the people you've trained, can you share what virtue you've learned from some of the people that you've trained, or like what stands out to you the
The
most?
uber successful ones have this coolness to themselves. They could be in like this hostile environment or this hostile meeting, and someone's coming at them and they're like just cool. It's like when you see that person who's in self-defense and someone at a bar is about to attack them, and you just see them cool trying to diffuse the situation. They've been here before. They're not like that drunk guy at the bar, like trying to throw haymakers and, you know, talking junk and all verbal. Like I've seen some of these CEOs in meetings where things have gotten hostile, or like my heart starts racing a bit, and I just see them sit there and they're like, okay, interesting. And they just kind of stay level headed. And that to me is like the number one thing I learned from them that I just admired. I was like, oh my God, that is awesome. That is so cool. They just were not rattled. That's something where I think as I'm gotten older, I'm just like, man, I'd love to just go through life and not get rattled. It could be the guy in the subway that bumped me last week. I'm thinking about him 5 hours later. It's like, what a waste of time. But it's the truth. Sometimes something happens and you're like, okay, take a deep breath, walk off, go home to your kids. It ain't worth it. It's like, you know what I'm saying? I'm sorry. It's the truth.
You know, something I've had to work on because and look, I don't know if it's a cultural thing, you know, I'm Greek, but there were times where I would have people do things and I thought like I have to say something, or I thought I have to push back, and I learned not to. In fact, the first time I really learned this lesson, and I don't want to say I was shamed, but when I was in the New York City Police Academy, they used to take us sometimes, we'd either run around the gym, like Don in circles till you threw up.
Yeah.
Or they'd have us run the FDR, the service road. And I remember once we were running in ranks, this is before 9/11, so everyone hated cops, which is kind of like the vibe that exists now.
Yeah.
We're running in rank, and like these people are flying through the FDR, and they're like, fuck you, fucking pigs.
Yeah, it's worse.
You know, whatever. And I remember somebody like spit at us or gave us the finger. I can't remember. And I was just like, hey, you know, I stopped, and the instructor grabbed me, like he grabbed me by the collar. He's like, hey, we don't do that. I'm like, but sir, did you not see what that person just did? Because they could tell we were cadets because we wore these ugly boxer shorts. I swear to God, they were made out of canvas, our shorts. And then this polo shirts. And he's like, you don't do that. And I was like, what do you mean, sir? And he's like, that's not what you're here for.
Yeah.
He's like, we don't behave like that. He's like, you need to lock yourself up.
Right.
And he did this in front of the other cadets. And I was just like, oh.
Big reality check. And what's fascinating is that same person who was yelling at you is the first one to call the cops as soon as their house is getting robbed. I'm sorry. I have no patience for it. Annoys the shit out of me. I'll say that. I don't care.
How do you navigate people wanting things from you? Because now you have reached a space where you're very successful. You're very influential. You're on social. You're on magazines. You get picked up by the news networks. Hey, come show us how to do this and do that. And you work with celebrities and with some of them, you have long-term relationships, like really close relationships with these folks. So how do you navigate people who always want to take from you? I would think, I'm making a presumption, but I would think you probably get hit up a lot by different types of people, some close, maybe some not, that want things from you. Am I wrongly presuming?
You know, it's funny because so much of it is in the approach, right? Because I'm not going to tell you right now that I shut everyone off. I don't. People call me, ask or message me, DM me, messaging me questions or asking for help. Like, how are they going to ask? Hey, Don, by the way, been following you for a while. Thank you for all the content you're putting out there. Just had a child, blah, 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 blah. I'm really struggling with this. I was wondering, can you point me in the right direction? You know, no problem. Or is it like 5'8", 140 pounds, need to lose 5% body fat? I'm like, delete. You know what I'm saying? Like so much of it, I think initially, because part of my job in my career is connecting with people and it is helping people. So I think like from the 10,000 foot view, when someone approaches me and they do it in a very polite way, I'm going to offer my help, and I'm going to do that because that's what I do. Now, when someone's like, hey, I'd like to come by your house and stay with you and work out with you in the bar. And it's like, no, it's not happening. Like that's for my, that's my, it's my home. It's my circle. The people who are normally allowed to do that or are invited in to do that, I'll say that, are people that I really care about or I have a really good connection with. And I want to invest myself into them. It's that simple. So
How do you decide that?
I just
I
got,
was invited to the barn, by the way.
no,
But
it
how do
just
you?
got, it just got, but like in all fairness, like I didn't, Gabrielle's event, I think her friend Michelle and Organic Olivia, I was like, yeah, guys, come out and get a training session in at some point. I think they were the only other ones that I invited out. But I listened to you speak and I was like, she's cool. I just had a good, like, I had a good feeling. I love how you presented. I loved your vibe up there. Everyone was dialed in. I turned to a couple of my friends and I was like, dude, she's got a good voice. I kept telling you that, remember?
You did.
And you just get a good feeling about people. You're like, I want to be around that person. Like they've got good energy. I don't know. You just get a feeling sometimes. I'm not going to tell you there's any formula.
You listen to your intuition
A lot,
and your instinct.
a lot, a lot. I learned to do that a lot.
You know, I noticed that people that lack self-confidence or trust in themselves, they don't listen to their voice.
I think people are they're so afraid to make the wrong choice. And so, you know what, you know what's been happening lately? I've been getting a lot of people reaching out to me to do a lot of speaking. Some events are paid, some events aren't paid. And I will do the events that aren't paid. If it's people I really care about and really want to, like, you know, you, Gabrielle, I don't, it's like,
Yeah,
yes,
Gabrielle's,
include
I
me,
did.
include me
Yeah.
in that. I don't need anything.
When Gabrielle hit me up, I'm like, just put my name
Yeah,
in.
put my
She's
name
like,
down.
oh, let me explain. I'm like,
Yeah,
you don't
no,
need to explain.
No, but don't, yeah, let me come help. Now I've had other people who are like contacting me, like, we'd like you to come out. This is going to be great for your platform. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe it is, but maybe it's not also. And I'd rather be at my son's game and putting my time and effort into things that I know are going to be paying me dividends. And if I miss an opportunity, if a buddy of mine calls me and is like, you missed a great event. Okay. It's like an investment. You're not going to, like, there's going to be plenty of investments you get calls about. And you're like, you should put money into this. And I have a great line from a client of mine. I just don't invest in those sort of things. Whether it blows up or not, it's not part of his values. It's not part of his rules or his direction. So he won't invest in anything. He'll only invest in the medical space. Anything outside of that could be the coolest concept. He's not going to do it. He's got rules and values. And if something hits and he didn't put money in it, he owns it. Okay. Can't win them all. I've gotten to that point now where it's just like, does this feel right? Who's there that I want to be around? What's their commitment? Or is it just like, we're going to put, like, you're going to have access to our people? I'm like, I just almost get a little annoyed if I don't know them. I'm like, you want me, like, I wouldn't want someone to come out for free to, like, I almost feel bad about that. Like, I had a nutritionist I'm very close with come out to my retreat every year. And, you know, we take care of his room, take care of his flight, everything. But like, I am sending him business. So that's a business exchange. And if it wasn't, I would pay him.
You play tennis.
I want them to win.
You hit the ball, they hit the ball.
I want them to
You
win.
hit the ball,
Yeah.
they hit the ball. I'm curious, do your kids think you're cool?
I got a great relationship with my kids. I think at times they'll look at me and they're like, I'll see them smiling, or
Are they ever like, this is my dad, and pull out the Muscle and Fitness cover?
I don't know. I'm just dad. I don't know. I got a great relationship with them, but I know I do piss them off at times.
How so?
Yesterday, my son, you know, he comes in, my wife and I have been like, really, he's 15 and we're like, there's this dangerous road. We don't want him to bike down. Mel's neighbor was killed by a car. One of our friends' wives last year was killed by a car. Just bad in her head. My wife's having more of a tough time with it than I am. So finally yesterday we let him bike to his friend's house on this path. He comes home and he's all pissed off. I'm like, what? I'm like, how'd it go? Like, you get fun? Like, I was thinking him being like, thanks. And he's a good kid, but he's 15. All my friends are going into town and I can't go. And I'm just like, okay. None of them have curfews either. I'm like, yeah, man, enough of that shit. I'm like, you're going to have a curfew. There's going to be rules in this house that you got to follow. And that's life. And that's what it is. And he wasn't happy about it. But it's like, I'm a parent first, then I'm their friend. I gotta draw it in the sand, man. We have to, and it's tough sometimes because you're tired, you come home from work. And that's why I think a lot of parents screw up, is they don't want to discipline at a time when you need to. You've been working all day, you're tired, things were blowing up at work or online, whatever it is. And then suddenly you come home and your kid's like, can I go out later? Or why can't I do this? And you're just like, all right, job, like the important job's got to kick in. So I don't know. It's just, you know, parenting, It's amazing how I can coach anyone on the planet. I feel like you put me in front of anyone, it's great. And my most difficult clients are my two children. It's like sometimes I'm just sitting there going, man, am I handling this right? I don't do that with anyone but my kids.
They're not gonna, I think it's like an automatic thing where they're not gonna listen to you.
Could be. You also love them so much and you also want to make them happy, but you also understand that sometimes your decisions can put them in a path to not be successful. Like, I don't want to like consistently sit there and enable them. Like, no, you're getting a job. Like, no, you spend your allowance. No, you miss curfew. No, you are not doing that because your 5 friends are doing it. No, you did not let us know that the plans changed. No, you are not taking an Uber back from Comac. It's a 45-minute ride. Parents going to pick you up. You're in 9th grade. There's certain things that I have rules with, my wife has rules with, that other parents may not understand or they may be lenient with. I don't give a shit. That's our sanctuary. Those are the boundaries we draw, and that's what we're creating.
What's the most important thing you want them to learn?
Accountability. And it's none of this love stuff. Like, save that shit. Like, of course we love our children. Like, what's the thing in your house? No, it's accountability. I want them to be accountable for their actions. They know I love them. They know my wife loves them. They know I will take a bullet for them. Accountability. Just look at me and say, I messed up. Just look at me and own it. That's it. Just be accountable for your actions and accept it when you screw up. Don't sit here and make excuses. Your teacher emailed me this week saying you disrupted class. Don't tell me you didn't. She's emailing me for a certain reason. That did happen this week. My son's going to kill me. It's like, he's a good kid, but like funny things will happen. I did this. I did worse. I won't show this to my son. But one day I want him to see it.
Maybe the vibe or the essence of like the environment today is like nothing is your fault. Like you did this because this happened to you, or you did this, or you said this because that's happening here. And I think it's okay sometimes to say, look, outside circumstances impact us, but maybe when it becomes the narrative for like why we behave a certain way and we don't take ownership, it's like, own it. Like even in the, I think about, and I try to do this as well. Like I try to, even when I mess up, I own it. I'm like, hey man, I messed up. Probably when I take a photo and I send it to you, I'm like, hey, I know it's a cap blast. I'm like, it's that day. I think maybe it's not as a popular thing today to have accountability.
Yeah, but you're also starting to recognize that when you don't do that, you don't feel good.
No, you feel shitty about yourself. And people don't realize that they feel shitty about themselves.
If I didn't call my son on that, he wouldn't have felt shitty. He would have just been like, okay, this is the way I'm feeling and this is the way to behave. And I'm like, no, like this is not.
You're supposed to feel bad.
Yeah, like when you're paying your own bills and you move out of the house and you're doing it on your own, like, all right, man, you're a man now. You can do what you need to do. Like, I'm still not going to agree with you on things and I'll let you know it, but you're paying your own bills. Like, as long as you're in my house.
Do you do these when you have your challenges for your community? Can you walk me through that? Like,
yeah,
like
I call these coaching moments.
Coaching moments.
People, it's funny because I'll actually turn to them during the challenge call and I'll be like,
well, what's a challenge call? How do the challenges work? You have a community now. Is your community, is it month to month? Is it a long-term thing?
Yeah, it's month to month. People can sign up for the year and obviously get a discounted rate, but typically people will come on for any given month. And if they want to jump off the challenge another month and download a program, they can do that. But what they get in the challenge is they get a video from me every morning answering their questions.
And what do they ask you?
Anything. Could be anything from training, nutrition, mind, sleep and recovery. They could put up videos of them like doing a specific movement. So they get the program, they get the video library, and then they're able to come on in a private Facebook group and ask me questions Monday through Friday. And then I answer it the following day through video. So if you ask me a question on a day 1 video, day 2, I'm like, all right, Evie asked about this diet, or Evie asked about this, or Evie, in your video, you could put up a video of yourself doing a specific exercise. And I'm like, too much knees. I want you to be more hip dominant. So you're really getting this personal coaching element Monday through Friday for 4 weeks. You
also have people that have been with you for years though.
Yeah. Like I've been running the challenges now, a couple months after COVID started. And yeah, they're people who are just diehards. They're great. They actually thought of the term DonCon after like Comic-Con. And that's my challenge. That's my retreat, which I'm hosting this July in Mexico. We'll have like 110 people.
What do?
We take over this island and we've been doing it for 4 years. It's sick. It's like all farm to table. They train with me. I have a yoga person in there, hikes, all this stuff, paddleboarding, swimming. They could do horseback riding. It's just cold plunges, saunas. It's awesome. And we make it this whole
Is it a week long?
1 week long. Last year I did 2 weeks. It was 150 people from like 30 countries. And it was like, I was on for 2 straight weeks. I was like,
That's a lot.
it's a lot. So this year we're going to do, they expanded the place. So we're doing 110 people in 1 week.
Where can people find you, Don?
DonSaladino.com.
Yeah.
Any questions, let me know.
All right. We'll put it all in there.
Thanks for having me on. I love this. This is great. I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you too.
Thank you.
Whenever the president is in the motorcade, the press is always with and they're always watching because they always wanted to have eyes on the motorcade in case he gets assassinated.
Yes.
They wanted to get it on camera. So if somebody wants to be an agent, what do they need to do? Because I get asked this all the time.
Stay in shape, get good grades, but also